Cotton!
Yes, Commander?
What are you doing?
Well, clearly I'm moderating this week's commission vote on the hardest monster.
Why would you need to do that? Surely everyone here is extremely reasonable.
Well, somebody stated that the hardest monster is the Toyota Tacoma, which is a truck.
Excuse me? What? Why would they do that?
Well, that question is actually part of the survey as well, and the answer was, P.
I think I need to call my therapist. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, welcome one and all to another absolutely wonderful continuation of the great debates of the Monster Hunter series, where I open the floor to you guys to tell me your opinions on important topics and why you feel that way. Today, with the recent release of the Holy Dragon God himself, we're going to be focusing on a topic that is particularly relevant to his existence: difficulty. As such, today, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for a dissection of the official community-generated list of the top 5 hardest monsters in Monster Hunter. That's right, which ones caused you the most problems, created the biggest wall in front of your progress, or just downright made you consider laying in the fetal position on the floor for a number of hours. We've all been there. So now let's share those times with each other and wallow together in infinite sadness.
Take a picture of us looking sad together.
And if you want to take part in the next list up for community voting, the top 5 best flagship monsters in all of Monster Hunter, just scroll on down to the link in the description of this video, and if you do vote, then make sure to also leave a comment on the video as to why you voted how you did, and you may even show up on screen in the next list video. But back to the meat of the matter then, we'll go over the top 5 vote getters for this particular list, followed by just a touch of graphical analysis on the voting as a whole. So without further ado, let's begin with
Number 5, with 4.3% of the votes.
Dr. Banner, now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry.
Furious Rajang.
For me, the hardest monster to fight is Furious Rajang. He only have like one weak spot on his head, and that forces you to take risk, and his fist flurry is hard to anticipate. And even in the new world with Clutch Claw and new graphic, his fight doesn't get any easier, as he can recover from a flinch straight to an attack by bouncing from a wall. And it's not like you can just tenderize his arm easily, as he can straight out pick you up when you Clutch Claw him.
Oh man, don't remind me. I mean, personally, I consider regular Rajang easier than Furious Rajang, at least in the new world. In the old world, it was definitely a bit more clear-cut. But basically, a hyper-aggressive and extra-fast version of one of the most aggressive and fast monsters in the series. Whether you're talking about the new version or the old version, that's hard. His actual body is tiny, which makes him incredibly hard to hit. And as if that wasn't enough, he spent a good chunk of the fight with his arms in a super hard mode that blocks most of your damage and makes most weapons bounce. I guess in essence that also makes him the hardest monster. The thing about Furious Rajang is that he is actually relatively low health as a monster, quite squishy. He is just so damn agile and small that it's hard to hit him, especially in places that he's weak, as in his head. And he's so dangerous that he is liable to kill you at any given moment before you even get one attack off, which is its own kind of difficulty entirely. I guess that's one thing to keep in mind here. Not only is difficulty as a whole a little bit subjective, person to person, but also you will find certain things more difficult than others with certain weapons. That said, there are few people who don't find this fanged beast a little bit hard to handle.
Number 4, with 4.81% of the votes.
Boys' shower shall run red with the blood of my enemies!
Bloodbath Diablos.
Bloodbath Diablos is the hardest monster in the series for me. Not only has he counted me more often than any other monster out there, his extremely fast attack speed, relentless and unpredictable nature, and absurd damage output always tricks me into falling into the trap of over-aggression, greed, which is, to this day, what I struggle with the most in keeping in check. I shudder to think what a tempered Bloodbath Diablos would be like in Iceborne.
And if you have ever fought this creature yourself, then you know it absolutely deserves to be here. For the most part, Bloodbath Diablos is hard for the same reasons that Furious Rajang is hard. The speed and relentless nature of his attacks. But instead of being quite as squishy, he lets you hit him a little bit more as a response, and then he gets weaker and significantly stronger as he gets weaker, and more dangerous to you as he gets weaker. So really, he doesn't really get weaker, he just gets stronger, which is really really saying something because at the start of the fight is still pretty darn hard, which is what makes the end even more challenging. It's super hard to even get him to that low health threshold without carding in the first place, meaning you are likely to not have a whole lot of room for error once you actually get to the hardest part of the fight itself. And damn, does it get hard. I love the use of the steam mechanic just as I loved it being used by Grimclawed Tigrex, but hell if it doesn't just make this fight so much harder as it progresses. Honestly, I would love to see one of these brought to the new style of Monster Hunter. Even though he was such a recent addition to the series as a whole, any fight that is this difficult, but for actual combat reasons rather than something silly and mechanical, will always be fun in some capacity. Bring back the hard stuff, just make it hard in fun ways, you know?
Number 3 with 14.05% of the votes.
Is this a crossover episode?
Behemoth.
For as much as my first instinct was to say the new Fatalis, Extremoth takes the cake as the most difficult challenge ever introduced to MHW. You had to have a coordinated team of people who all knew exactly what to do and what role to play in order to have even a hope of taking him down. Back when that event first came out, I spent more than a month just trying to kill regular Behemoth with SOS groups. It's a pretty easy quest with the master rank gear we have now, but back in high rank I could have never even dreamed of taking Extremoth down.
Time for another notorious fight, and for those wondering, I did include any extreme Behemoth votes under regular Behemoth. It's just one category, as this is the hardest monster, not hardest quest, and extreme is just an extension of all the things that regular Behemoth does anyways. That said, man, these attacks that he does are absolutely brutal. As Elatrion showed us again quite recently, a monster that has access to multiple elements and therefore the ability to apply multiple blights and chew through different holes in your elemental resistances can be extremely strong. Pair that with frequent attacks that apply the defense down debuff, a legitimate tanking mechanic like Safi'jiiva has, an absolutely terrifying pin attack, a tornado placed on player location, and a one-shot zone-ending ability that required you to hide behind rocks that you have to keep alive from his own attacks. This fight is about as close as you could get to an MMORPG type fight in Monster Hunter, and it really lives up to that feeling of being a raid boss. I still remember the first night that we took on regular Behemoth. That was a struggle. Extreme Behemoth? Oh, that was something else. Even as a crossover monster who is unlikely to ever return in the future because he's a crossover monster, I will 100% remember his fight for the rest of my time hunting monsters on this earth.
Number 2 with 15.82% of the votes.
You're still here.
Elatrion.
For me the hardest monster is the new Elatrion. He's aggressive, barely giving you room to breathe, fast as hell, and hits like a freight train. Couple that with the elemental DPS check and a Scatman King and entire team, and you have an absolutely brutal fight. I love his fight so much. He is the first monster to really engage me and get me back into the game after a couple months hiatus. He forced me to get better at the game, develop new strategies, and make counter builds to finally bring him down.
And now to return to a slightly more recent creature, of course, Elatrion has a place on this list. I mean, I know a ton of people still haven't killed him. Hell, I know a bunch of people haven't killed him even with the nerfed special assignment version of him that comes before Fatalis. Why is that? He is genuinely hard. He has a ton of different attacks with different patterns and effects, and regardless of his overarching mechanics, his individual moves, the ones that happen one at a time, they're actually pretty dang hard to deal with. Like, aside from a couple of the moves that just make him stand on the spot for ages, he actually can cover a lot of ground and keeps you with your weapon sheathed for long periods of time, just trying to dodge these attacks, which of course just compounds upon the elemental DPS check that is part of the fight. The more time you spend dodging his attacks, the less time you spend hitting him. The less time you spend hitting him, the more likely you are to miss the element damage check and die to Eschaton Judgment anyways. That was always the death loop of Elatrion, and it is an entirely understandable struggle for anyone who voted him on this list as a result.
Number 1 with 54.94% of the votes.
Break off the horn, grind it up, snort it.
Fatalis.
For hardest monster, I literally have no choice but to say new Fatalis. He hits really hard, and can one-shot you a lot of the time. I currently have 1165 plus defense, and 24-42 fire resistance, depending on whether I eat for element resist up L. And I still get one shot, or close to it most of the time, yet none of it is BS. Even his Bathe the World in Flames attack is quite fair to avoid, and, believe it or not, breaking both of his horns makes it so it doesn't even one-shot you anymore. the fight gives you ways to make it slightly easier, such as breaking both his wings makes him stay on the ground more, or how the siege equipment can topple him, or, the obvious one, breaking at least one horn makes his final phase more manageable.
I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not sure anyone is or should be. I think even the people who voted for other monsters still assumed that Fatalis would win, just because, wow, it's been a week and a half since he released. A week and a half. And how many people in this comment section are still looking for their first kill? Not even just the people who play once in a while, but those who play for multiple hours every day. His moveset is incredibly high damage and incredibly fast, with low downtime in between the hits. His hitboxes are very fair and tight, but due to his sheer size, they'll often hit you anyways. I can't get angry about taking damage when I actually get touched by his ankle in a charge, even if I am angry that his ankle itself does damage. This is the type of anger that you want to produce with a challenging monster. I don't feel like Fatalis is bullshit. I don't feel like he is cheap or broken or anything like that. He's just damn hard. People complain about his health pool and compared to the quest timer, but if you bring heavy artillery and use the siege weaponry, then it's not really an issue. And his big super attack just asks you to run to specific places to avoid it. Not hugely complex or gamey, just legitimately hard. That's what I want. When I say that I want a hard monster every once in a while, Fatalis is exactly, precisely, perfectly that. He's not hard like a video game boss, he is difficult, like fighting an ancient, legendary, living, breathing dragon. And that just about covers it for the list itself. So now it's time to take a little bit of a look at the graphical analysis.
Using statistics!
First, you'll notice very quickly, yeah, Fatalis won this list by more than any monster has won any of these lists before, and I think quite reasonably so. I mean, he got nearly 55% of all the votes, like all of them. In fact, he absorbed so many of the votes that pretty much everything below the top 3 was negligible voting-wise. Don't get me wrong, number 4 and 5 are still clearly higher than the rest below them, but the jump to number 3 is just so large that, to be honest, I asked you guys for the top 5 most difficult monsters in the series, but it looks more to me like you managed to boil it down to the top 3. It's also worth noting that yes, some of you did vote for Dodo Gamma, of course for the reason that he is cute, so he is hard to kill, but it is so much more than that, isn't it? Because otherwise we would just capture him, right? No, I know you guys. You see his cute little face and his sweet little walk, and you just want to hang out with him, walk around with him peacefully for the whole quest timer, and hey, I must admit, that does make the quest pretty hard to complete. Alright everyone, I've been Con Dinosaur, and this has been your list of the official top 5 hardest monsters in all of Monster Hunter, crowning Fatalis as the victor. Do you agree with the majority on this one? What list would you like to see us do in this style in the future? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Con, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.